Right, guys, we'll get started. So, obviously you have me, Sam, and then you have obviously main lady Helen Gribble. Today's is obviously going to be an interesting one. If you do have questions, just keep posting them and we'll get back to it. But in essence, this is probably going to give you an insight into Helen, insight to her journey overall, right, in terms of life. It depends how far we can go back.
I'm getting old, my memory's getting a little bit shoddy.
For all those that don't know, Helen is 40 years old.
40.5, I'm saying now. 40, almost 41.
Almost.
That's what it is.
Almost.
We're getting into winter, it's 41.
Almost 41, but obviously from the outside in, she probably seems about 35, right? So.
Oh my god, you could have gone 20. From the outside, she's at least 39.
35 is generous. At least I've been generous. So we're obviously got a lot to cover, but like I said, Helen's got a remarkable journey, not only in health but mental side of things, and also obviously been through a lot in life. So Helen, I'll ask you the question really, where do you want to start? Where do you think most people would probably have, where you can give a lot of impact or share a lot of your history but impact a lot of lives?
I think most people, majority of clients who join now probably won't ever have known or met the person I was probably in as 14. Some of the older clients will still remember what I looked like, etc. The new clients won't. Certainly a lot of our members this year would have never seen the photos on the wall, etc. of what I looked like. So I think that's probably key. Really.
What year was that?
It's 2014, so it's December 2014 when I joined, the 15th of December 2014. Exactly.
So, in terms of what she's saying when she says join, guys, at that time she wasn't a coach. She actually came to be trained and obviously lose a bit of weight.
Do you know what I remember the most about that day? The fact that you actually were on holiday when I joined, and that's probably the only time I've known you to be on holiday. Because you weren't there when I joined for the first 2 weeks, and you came back after.
Where was I?
I have no idea. But I didn't even get to meet you until after Christmas, because I joined on the 15th. I was meant to do like a 2-3 week trial. And then you came back after Christmas in January, and that's the first time I had a one-to-one with you when you got my first results in.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Took that time out.
You needed it for you and me.
In terms, okay, let's talk about that. Talk about where you were at that stage in your life. And so, where were you? How did you get to where you were? What size were you? What weight were you?
I was at 86 kilos. I actually lost about 2-3 kilos just prior to that, during the last few months after summer, and I've been going to a gym. I was cycling every day to work, and I assumed that was exercise. I wasn't really taking any attention to my food at all whatsoever. I come off the back of 2 years, quite a difficult, challenging 2 years in personal life. And actually at the time now, I can look back now and realise that actually I was just eating and drinking my way through dealing with that. And so by the time I joined UFIT, it was, I was like way out of control, really, I'll say. So
obviously, Helen hit a valid point there, right? Sometimes we have behaviours, and sometimes we choose to mask them with alcohol, booze, food. And all of you probably recognise this, but some of you still probably do it to this day, and Helen's not obviously immune to it, but there's an element sometimes when you're in that place, whether it's really low, that you go into a self-destruction mode, but you think it's normal. Oh yeah, I thought I was living my best life, literally. I'd actually said to my friends, you only live once, and I think now when I talk to clients now, because one is I've left, both my parents died like in my late 20s, over between an 18-month period, and then I took the decision that I lost 3 people actually closely, and I thought, rightly, if they're all going to die, then I'm going to live my best life now and live it to the fullest and never say no to anything. And I literally took that as every single time I would be out socialising, it would be party hard because I only live once. So it was very much like that. It was like I didn't see that it wasn't actually dealing with the problem. So obviously when Helen came, she was a big, obviously people don't know, she was a big gamer, right? So like if you've got kids that like Fortnite and all that jazz and Call of Duty, Helen will probably back in the day could probably kick their ass. Oh yeah, I still can now. No, that's a lie. No. I play once every 2 weeks. So, Helen, so when you see Helen in person, her back's like this. Her back's like this because she used to sit on the sofa like this quite a lot. Yeah. Right? and she walks around with a hunch. That's because of the sofa, and the sofa was really bent. Yeah. But I play 8 hours a day. And I had a full-time job. Riddle me that one. How I managed to have a full-time job and play 8 hours a day. So if you can appreciate, right, doing a full-time job, which is probably 8 to 10 hours, and then doing 8 hours on a PS4, right? So if if you lot are thinking about time and things, look at how much time Helen put into the investment of just, remember she used to drink that Coke, take KFCs, right, takeaways galore, she used to do all these things, right, but you can appreciate going from a world of 8 hours at work, 8 hours on PS4, and repeating that for what, how many years?
Oh, 8 years.
8 years, right? Wow. We won't go into that anymore. But so when Helen came, obviously it was a moment where she decided to change. But actually, interesting enough, from my remembrance, is that Helen was an all or nothing person to some degree. She was very target driven. She didn't really know what she wanted to some degree, but she used the InBody to some degree as a big driving force. But like Helen mentioned, she used to cycle to work. And a lot of us fall into that route where we think we do 10,000 steps a day and we cycle to work and we think it's our activity and we think we can actually eat 5,000 calories and obviously attempt to lose weight, but then get frustrated at the fact we don't lose weight because the activity is actually not doing anything.
That's true.
But in terms of where you were then, Helen, so let's take us through the weight you were.
Yeah.
Then where did you end up?
Came down to not far from where I am now. So by the following April, I'd come down from what was essentially like a size 18 down to a size 10. So I come down to about 67 kg, I think it was that point, 67, 68, which was pretty strong going because and you're right, like the inner body was a massive thing. And also I was all or nothing. I was very much all or nothing, except chopping and changing different things. So I decided this was something I was actually going to stick to continuously, to prove a point really to myself and other people that I could stick to something. So that's getting it done. On
that note, so Helen came with the initial obviously outlook of doing 30 days, just to do 30 days, right?
I was really outright about it as well because I had a membership with David Lloyd. I remember saying, I'm literally not joining, I'm just using this for a month.
So she had the outlook of doing 30 days, and obviously after 30 days, the interesting thing with Helen, so again, there's a mindset shift as well for some of you, because Helen came into the studio after 30 days. She didn't pay monthly on a membership, she paid it outright in one go. And Helen did this, what, for 3 years at a time?
I did for 3 years every time. I worked, so what I did is I get a quarterly bonus at work, so my drive to get my quarterly bonus at work was to pay for the studio. So I'd have to get the best possible bonus every 3 months, and that would just all go into savings to make sure I could afford the gym every year. Right,
so for those of you, for example, who look at money or them sort of things, you got to appreciate when you're making a commitment of investing $2 grand, $2.5 in yourself, right, all in. There's an element where here it switches all in as well. Obviously, remember, this is like sales to some degree, but also art persuasion for yourself and things like that. There's a lot of things into it. Now, I'm not sitting here saying everyone paying full, but there is an element to an all or nothing mentality sometimes where if you put the money down, it means you're committed into some degree because you value the money. Now, Helen, for example, if you look at one of Helen's probably always challenges, it always stems to money. Either a bit like mine, either thinking you don't have enough money, or you can't save, or what would you describe it as well?
I always describe it as a worst case scenario. I always think of worst case scenario, and it strikes enough fear in me that I'll just find a way to make sure things get paid for well in advance.
So, as you can appreciate, that fear of that, for example, that's why she paid in full, but also the fear of putting it all in is that she wants to get the most out of it. So probably what Helen brought to the table for herself is that commitment then in turn made her get every ounce out of it. So whether that's squeeze information, whether that's training, and she used to cycle as well, didn't you?
I cycled from Grove Park, so Foss Park, to dropped off on Knob Road. Or sometimes I didn't actually just go straight down, so I go straight from Foss Park to the studio.
Cycling,
yeah. And then cycle back straight through town, down back up.
So guys, if you want commitment, right, and you think town's out of the way,
oh god, that would be so much easier at that point. God, it'd been straight shot.
Obviously, Helen used to cycle from Grove Park all the way to the studio. Now, if you imagine that cycle return, put your goggles on and just imagine you cycling, and then training session really hard, and then cycling all the way back from not only there, all the way back to where?
I was living on Knob Road at that point, yeah, so it was up Knob Road.
So yeah.
And that's the reason why, again, came back to running, because remember, I've paid for the gym membership, I can't possibly afford to get a car. Cycle it.
Right, and that's Helen's sort of mentality all over. If you look at every area of her life, she's actually grown in that area of life. But that's a skill that she'll probably talk about later. But in essence, that's the commitment side of Helen. So you can appreciate from where she started to where she got to in April. You can understand why fast and how committed she was, right? But that comes down to a lot of areas. If you think about cycling is one thing. I read a quote the other day, like, doing something, every time you see a big gathering, you always think it's something special. So like, and everyone goes there. But like, for example, one of the guys I follow is at the beach at 6:10 in the morning, no one's there. He's like, the only reason why I turn up at 6:10 is because no one's here. So therefore, if no one's here, it means it's hard to do it and uncomfortable. So therefore, it's uncomfortable, it means it's the most important thing to do. And then you do it. And a bit like Helen, for example, going from cycling, for example, it's hard to do. Like, if no one's ever cycled before in winter, but also had that commitment. If you can overcome that hurdle of commitment in terms of cycling, then the results are going to be easy, because actually cycling element is quite hard.
Cycling in snow is the most amount of non-fun ever.
There you go. But in terms of obviously food, because the food didn't really change much, did it? Really?
No, I think it did. I actually think it did. I think it changed quite drastically. If I look back now. Because again, it was about the money. I said to myself, all right, if I'm investing all this money ahead and I'm committing to it, what's the point of? And it'll be ... Like, I gave up smoking. I gave up smoking on the 9th of December.
Oh, there you go.
So I gave up smoking on the 9th.
How many packs did you have the other day?
25. I used to like do a little competition of stacking all the cigarette packets up so you could hit the ceiling. God, now I'm thinking about how much money it is now.
That's just stunk your house out.
Yeah, it did. Bizarrely, I'd always smoke outside because we didn't want the house to smell, but I would stink myself.
What a weird analogy that is. I don't like smoking, but I'll smoke outside the house first.
Yeah. I gave up on the 9th because I remember I'll give up the day before I started, so the 15th. So the exact day I remember I gave up. Because again, that was like, buddy, it's like, if I'm going to put the money towards this, why spend it on the fags? And then it became the same for everything. Then I'll justify everything in my head, like, well, if I'm going to spend this money, why am I choosing to eat this? Or why am I choosing to go out with my friends and get drunk as much as they are? Or why am I choosing X, Y, Z? So,
did you find it easy to give up?
Smoking? If I think back, I don't remember it being a challenge, no.
Is it just because you had enough leverage against it?
Yeah. Even though you say money has always been one of my roots for lots of things in my life. So as soon as I attached it to something that has a strong enough emotional pull, or stress, or fear, whatever you want to call it, or leverage, then no, it was just easy, really. Well, that's the truth, though. It's the same. Remember, you know that's what applies.
My dad's the opposite.
In what way?
Mate, he's got £100. They got fags.
Wax it straight away. I don't know how much they are anymore. They're probably about £15-20 a pack, aren't they?
About £10 I think.
I don't even think you get a full 20 anymore, don't you? Either you get 18.
Mate, you get like 12 now, 11, 16.
Back at 20, it's 1.
all comes at different costs. Yeah. In terms of obviously then going forward, then so obviously you got your result. But the thing is, when you got your result, we didn't. Back in them days, we didn't do photo shoots or anything, did we?
No, I think we discussed it. We did actually discuss it once, so we never. Not very talking about this. We discussed it once, and we never came back to it. And half of me was disappointed, and the other, but a stronger, like 1/3, but 2/3 of me was also relieved because I still wasn't. If you remember that, if you think about the time frame, that was a relatively short time frame to lose that weight. And actually, psychologically, I'd not really caught up with what was happening physically. So I was still the same person as I was when I was 86.
Did you hear that? That's very important. Yeah. Right, so this is actually valid for every single person watching this, even members and non-members, is that the actual, when you do any, so for example, we could look at quite a few things. If you look at dieting, or fast dieting, or restricted dieting, anything that's really enhancing the result, in one breath you love it because you get the result. But like Helen just mentioned then, mindset-wise, it never caught up fast enough. So this is why a lot of us, for example, always end up gaining weight, because psychologically you never gain enough momentum mindset wise, or enough knowledge of yourself or self-awareness to catch up to that point. So therefore, if you're thinking about doing a restricted diet or doing fast dieting, guys, get to a destination, I'm telling you now, you're just going to screw yourself up, because Helen just made them, because I've seen Helen now from obviously all the years, but We'll go into that later, but yeah, that's a massive point.
Yeah.
So where were you when you got to that point then? Because obviously it's still...
I was like size, I was at that size 8-10 threshold. I came down a little bit lower afterwards, just because I wanted to challenge myself. I ultimately stayed at that point really. Well, it was just from a physical point of view, I was great. I was told, okay, let me rephrase that. I was told I looked good, but I complimented, etc. I didn't necessarily see it, and I wasn't more confident than I was when I was 86 or heavier. That wise, I was still in the same position of not looking in the mirror. I would avoid looking in the mirror still. I started by changing the gym kit, didn't I? Because we joked about that, but that started to happen. That was probably the catalyst for it slightly. I would still look in the mirror, and I'd always see, like, it was a very weird experience because I'd see for a second, like a literally split second, if I looked properly in the mirror in the gym, for example, I'd see it, and then it would almost like vanish, like, and I go, I don't know what people are saying.
We've got funky mirrors in the gym.
Yeah, they look like crazy house mirrors.
They make you look good.
You look 10 years younger.
A bit of ripples in it. Make you look
you lost 10 kilos.
But on that point then, obviously, so Helen, so a good one for a lot of women who are watching this, for example, about self-confidence. It's actually, like I said, about the coldness, for example. It's actually doing the thing that actually you probably fear. So Helen started training in hot pants, it basically seemed like.
It was.
You can see Helen.
I wore them the other day around the house. I still have them.
You can see Helen's bum lip, right?
Yeah, I did that. Pick up a dumbbell.
And then she used to wear a vest, right? And then you got to appreciate there's an element of self-confidence that grows with that, because as you do the first hurdle, which is actually walking to a gym like that and actually being very self-conscious, like, oh shit, everyone's watching me. After you get over that, in essence, you just start to blend in again, because ultimately it's just in your head. Yeah, people naturally look at you and probably be subjective. Remember, you can't... The subjectiveness, guys, you can't escape that anywhere. So whether it's in our gym, whether it's in any other gym, you can't... Or in your office, you can't escape subjectiveness. It's just natural. Now, some people are going to say something, some people are not, right? But that's just how human nature works. So if you're actually ever thinking of not doing something because you feel like you're going to be judged, just remember, you're always judged, which then just basically cuts that out. So obviously then Helen started training these hot pants, and so forth, doing these like RDLs and then doing these hip bridges and things like that.
I remember I don't actually take, when I think about it now, I still feel a bit cringy, because I felt cringy at the time that I was doing it. The thing is though, I imagine it probably came across, again, it's perception, isn't it, and judgment. I imagine it came across like I was like fully confident and happy in my body, etc. And why wouldn't I be, because I was a particular size, etc. Inside though, I wasn't comfortable. But I just think I had to push for boundaries, because I also know I couldn't go back to doing what I started training in, which was like men's gear, because I started training in men's kit. So I'm hiding everything.
The interesting thing is, you haven't seen Helen. Helen's dot out gear, right? Like grey bottoms, I think you had, didn't you?
Yeah.
Grey bottoms. She used to train these baggy grey bottoms and this horrible t-shirt.
Yeah.
But for instance, that's because where confidence was, right? But even again, this is something to think about as well. And we all have this perception, again, subjectiveness. Someone's slim, they must be happy. Someone's slim, they must have confidence. Again, that ain't the case. Sometimes they don't go hand in hand, because like Helen said, a lot of it's got to progress with you over time. So if you keep fasting forward then, so let's go from April, how would you say because obviously, remember, you're still working at British Gas by that point, right?
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Alright, you're working at British Gas. And so let's go probably another year. Where were you? That weight was still relatively the same, right?
Yeah, I uploaded all the data recently just for fun. I've stayed the same. Now I'm up by one kilo a minute, so I'm 66 a minute. I've stayed the same all the way through. So through that next year, it was more to do with, and I hear a lot from clients as well, is that I remember being slightly lost. Like I didn't have, because I spent all that time focusing, being so black and white on losing weight, losing body fat. Let's get a body fat number. That actually, when you get there and go, actually, I don't want to go low, this is quite good, then it becomes...
Just on that note, what Helen used to do, guys, this is how Helen made a visible trigger. No one's probably ever seen it. Some clients have, some clients haven't. She had a plastic wallet folder, but in the plastic folder she had all her in-bodies. Every single in-body, right? And in that note she had the nutrition recommendations, she had notes. Because when we used to do one-to-ones back there, it weren't with the sophisticated system we have now. It was just pen and paper to some degree. But for example, she made a portfolio of her growth, which I think is very important, because it obviously allowed her to have a personal connection, allowed her to see a timeline of herself, but also showed how much she invested in it, because she kept the data and checked it herself. But yeah, over the course of the years, in essence, goals to get stronger, but relatively a lot of behaviours start to grow. But you still didn't really do much self-development, did you?
No, I didn't do any self-development. There's one thing that did actually, you just said, that triggered that I still do, which I did do then, it obviously works, is remember I used to do the vision boards with the body fat percentage on.
Yeah.
Because for me, that's what I use as a marker. So I'd have like these pictures of semi-naked women all over the place on this massive board.
Guys.
That's nothing to do with this, by the way. This is just personal.
Let's just go back, right? When she was 13, she had fucking naked women.
Yeah, I did.
Right.
About 11. It's the cars. I love the cars. And my sister's like, not the woman draped over it. No, I really want that car.
So guys, just remember, right? This is interesting. We'll touch that actually. It's important. Remember, some people are watching this. You probably don't know where you're at. They probably don't know what happening. And I've seen it in speaking to some clients as well. Sometimes you have children. They just don't know where they're at. They don't know where they fit in. They don't know what's happening to them. There might be hormonals all over the place. But with Helen, it's what you knew that, right? You were quite clear.
Yeah. I was very clear about it. I came home at 5. I don't know, I told you this story. I got really upset because my teacher had got married over the summer, and when I came back to school, when I'd gone into, I must have been 5 years old, going on 6. So I said I was crying hysterically. Mum was like, "What's upset?" She says, "Well, she's got married, and I was going to marry her." Okay, that's fine.
Does your mum actually not understand then, or not?
No, she understood.
Did she?
Yeah, she found the Cindy's were found in bed together even growing up. She's like, especially why are your Barbies in bed together naked, Helen? Oh yeah, don't know. So yeah, it was quite clear. There wasn't really ever a debate about it. I think once I even had like when I was a kid, I had a such a cliche. I had wanted to be a professional tennis player. I didn't have a tennis coach when I was growing up as well.
Just to see that.
It's very obvious.
Can you just hit that ball for me?
Again.
But just again, that's because ultimately, right, it's still a challenge, right? Into this day, right? People fitting in and people feeling they can have an acceptance is actually quite high as well, right? It's quite scary as well, right? Trying to be accepted. Or obviously for you, did you have actually any fear about that?
Yeah, all the time. I still have it now. I think there's some things that a lot of people take for granted that I can't. For example, like I can't check into a hotel overseas without an awkward moment, especially depending on the countries as well, where it may be illegal. That's always something you don't really consider, that awkward moment of what beds we got or how to have that discussion. Those are things that I don't have a problem holding my girlfriend's hand anywhere. I still have to be considerate of it though, and there's still an unspoken situation. If we go into a situation where it's obviously not going to be comfortable, without a conversation, we'll walk apart from each other. Those are things that we have to think. I think you just think about all the time. And it's not a fair thing. It's just an acceptance of there's only so far. I think in some situations that you can be openly who you are.
I think that's like in everything though. It's like what's going on in the world right now, right? Unfortunately, it's just you have to just keep looking at it differently, don't you?
Yeah, you just keep you always. I think there's just things that you like. Again, it's like a lot of people don't have to think about, or they probably do for their own reasons. Being gay though, you just have to always be like consciously assessing a situation, or constantly assessing. Being in a situation of not less now because I'm not really that conscious of it, I suppose. But say when meeting new people, etc. I used to have more concerns about it. Now it's like, well, it's not really a major deal. It's like having blonde hair. It's just part of somebody or of myself. And that's if I treat it like that, then that's how other people are going to treat me as well. I find in life. Having said that, though, again, if you're in a different situation environmentally, or as I said, in a different country, it's a whole different ballgame. I've been a relative of somebody that many times on holiday. It's very awkward.
We're sisters.
Sisters, yeah. Oh, is this your sister? Yes. Oh. Well.
But again, guys, that's obviously it's the side note, but it's obviously still relevant in Helen's journey to some degree, right? Because obviously still having a battle when you're a child, to some degree understanding yourself, and then obviously going through obviously your parents and so forth. So I want you to understand that Helen's Helen, where she's now, when we'll get to where she is now. But Helen's Helen, but that's not cream of the cake. That doesn't sound any easy. Like, I
don't know where you're going with that one. It's not cream in the cake.
But you know, like it's not just like plain sailing. It's not like this is like this. This is like this. This is like this. This is like this. This is like this.
I think it's what you said earlier. I think everybody sees weight loss or being in shape, and then that must mean that someone's life is not cushy, or how could it not be? And actually, it hasn't been. That's okay. If it hadn't been though, I wouldn't be who I am now as well.
So that's an interesting thing. Let's fast forward. So obviously, you worked at British Gas, right?
Yeah.
And then
nothing wrong with the gas. Got a few clients still working there.
So the interesting thing with Helen, right, is I'll try and remember the story correctly, and she'll probably correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, the moment of the gym is obviously a change in career. Is that we hired someone else, or went to hire someone else. That fell through, but she didn't know that at the time. But the interesting thing, Helen didn't speak up at all.
No.
And she'll probably describe why, she'll probably explain that in a minute, but just for you who are probably looking at yourselves right now in this certain time and obviously going, okay, I want a different career, or I can't do this, or just don't know if I do that. But when we actually went to hire someone, and then Helen actually then became more vocal as that person didn't materialise.
Yeah, it was like, you announced it on the Sunday, we'd had a conversation, you'd asked me, I was so lacking confidence, even though it's something I'd secretly wanted so hard.
What made you want it? Because a lot of people, when they lose weight, the interesting thing is, and you probably agree with this, a lot of people who lose weight typically always want to go into fitness, thinking it's an easy career, which I'm going to hope you're going to fucking correct that.
No.
Right?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. It's a piece of piss.
My job, Sam, your job looks a piece of piss.
Yeah, it is. It's just having a laugh, really, isn't it?
But when did that moment come where you thought, you know what, I do want to change your career?
I think it was Jeff, actually.
Was it?
It was something that I remember just watching Jeff work. Jeff was a previous coach, to people who won't know. So Jeff was the coach there when I started.
He's just watching Jeff. You're all right. You was all right. Not great.
Yeah, he was all right. I think it was his knowledge. I really I admired someone's knowledge. And also, Caroline as well. I saw Caroline go through a massive transformation, and also her journey, and I thought, well, that's an amazing journey. I think the side that put me off was knowing how hard the job was. Actually, I still knew that. Even as a client, I could tell it was hard, because I was quietly always observing. Even when nobody knew, I was always watching. I was always watching the coaching cues. I was watching how they were moving. I was watching what they were looking at constantly when I was training. So I understood it was a really, really hard job. And because of my confidence levels in myself, I was like, there's something I can never do. And I'll tell myself that I could never do that, because that's out of my reach. So I just keep telling myself that, which is probably why when you then spoke to me, I didn't say anything. I didn't actually respond, because I didn't have enough confidence to say I wanted to do it. And then you announced it on the Sunday. I think it was like a while after. You announced it on the Sunday, and I didn't say anything. I remember about the time it was a Sunday night. We'd been in the living room watching it, and I went into the kitchen and started washing the dishes without saying anything. Just cried in a very silent, dramatic cry. I didn't say anything. Like, it was just well, more of a frustration myself as well. Like, oh damn it, that was probably my only chance, and I fucked up because I didn't say anything. And then that coach was still in place when I said something to you, because you'd said it's too late. As we sat on the chill out area, and I said, well, I was like this, so uncomfortable. My mum was like this, going, I want to be a coach. And I was saying it like, I want to be a coach, like a whisper. And you're like, what? It's too late. And then it didn't work out, and then you phoned me one Tuesday morning while I was at work. So I literally just dropped out. I was in the middle of work. I was like, I don't care. I just drop everything and speak to Sam. A job? Okay. I don't really said it as well. I might have a job for you. Like, you weren't really fully committed to yourself. I might. It just depends if you want it. Depends how you're at this time.
The interesting thing about, obviously, that same with Helen and Amber, really. It's actually, it's a moment, just ring and then organise it. But again, remember, even though at that point, for example, it obviously eventually you came on board, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, even though you go through a health journey, sometimes the mistake is you want to help people because someone helped you, but sometimes you've got to articulate, what does that help mean, or how does it look? Being a personal trainer, I'd probably say it's probably one of the hardest jobs. Bit like a doctor to some degree, in many forms, because you have to self-study. But in terms of yourself, you obviously for you it was a roller coaster, really, wasn't it? Because obviously you came on board, but then you studied well, though, didn't you?
Well, I was already studying kind of on the side beforehand, because if you remember, I'd already started listening to podcasts every day anyway. So I'd started without me really realising. I was treating it as a hobby. The whole health and fitness thing was a hobby. I just wanted to understand it more. I wanted to know what Sam knew to get me from position A to position B, because I wanted to understand it myself. So I was just so intrigued by it. So I started listening to different podcasts, and I was lucky to be able to do that at work, actually, because I started so early and at time-wise at work. And then I started doing my first qualification was actually before I started working. Remember, I already had my first nutrition qualification going on the go, the level 1. So by the time I came on board, that was almost already finished, really. That's how it worked. I think I'd started it just beforehand. So
because you paid for your own courses, didn't you?
Yeah. So
that's another thing as well. Helen, so obviously big investment.
I paid it off. I got my statement last week. I finally paid it off. Okay. The level 3 just got paid off. I got my statement online last week. Literally on Thursday, I went, oh, it's paid.
So the interesting thing though, obviously Helen went down the route. It cost about $3,000, I think, didn't it?
Yeah, it did three and a half.
$3,500, and obviously you know what Helen's like with money back then.
Yeah.
She put on a repayment plan for about 20 years.
Yeah.
But in terms of obviously moving forward, the interesting thing with you, obviously the development, it's interesting because a lot of people, when we're going to talk about what happened, obviously for a lot of people who weren't really understand, so we won't go into too much detail, but and then eventually overnight you have to look after 50 clients?
65.
65. So at one stage in the studio, as Helen started, how long have you been there for?
It was the June. I started on the 1st of June, and it was in the November time. Yeah. So, yeah.
That went long. So as you can appreciate, right? So Helen's gone from British Gas to a studio, right? Now, obviously, remember hour-wise it changed. So Helen was on a shift pattern to some degree. So 6 till 2 and 2 till 9, and it always flowed opposite, right? But then the moment came, obviously in November, where boom, overnight Helen had to take 65 clients on. Now the interesting thing is, some people will probably break, and Helen's going to talk. We're going to talk about when Helen's broken, because it's incredibly important to understand. But 65 clients overnight is a lot of pressure to take, and you got to understand. At that point, it's not just pressure of the clients, it's pressure of me, pressure of the studio, expectations on herself, her fulfilling and becoming something. But the pressures of 65 clients, for those who don't really understand, right, it's a lot of pressure overnight. It's like, boom, Helen, guess what? You need to go from working 8 hours, I need you at 10 hours. Helen, I need from 10 hours, I need you at 16 hours. Right? So I want you to really understand this is, when you settle into a role, you just think 8 hours a day, and if fitness is not your passion, for example, or becoming the best is not your passion, if someone turns around and says you've got to do 16 hours a day, and you go, that ain't for me, there's an element where you need to question yourself to some degree, because being a personal trainer, you can only get better with clients, and you can only get better through experience. The training side is relatively, in my opinion, very easy, but the actual coaching side is the actual hardest. But actually, you need members to coach, right? And you need a huge amount, you need a fluctuation amount. And Helen will go through years of being a coach and obviously frustrations. But at that moment in time, when you took out 65 questions, how was it?
To do as bizarre as it is, I remember feeling like my entire organs were going to fall out myself, because I was like, wow. I was like, oh my God. Do you know, if I really think about it now, I think it was the best thing that could ever happen to me. At the time, I was like, this just has to happen. There isn't really any other choice. And I distinctly remember the conversation, because you gave me a choice. I had a choice. This is what people have to understand. I had a choice to say no, and I didn't. I said yes, because there wasn't.
That's a valid point, because a lot of people perceive, and especially in our role. Well, a lot of members watching, don't they? I remember all through the years, Helen, you're working loads, or Helen, you're doing this, is someone doing this to you? And I remember all these little hearsay comments. It's like you have to defend yourself all the time, didn't you? Well,
yeah, and also it's you're keeping a professional level at the end of the day. It's not it's to some degree it's just the running of a business, isn't it? And for me, I've always had a choice, and I've always chosen to work. Actually, even before, as much as, if you remember when I worked at British Gas, I was working 8 hours, but remember you talking to Dee saying you work a lot of extra hours. I was like, well, yeah, because work hard. I've always been a grinder. I've always grafted at something to be the best at something. Even if before being at youth I wasn't passionate about what I was doing, I would work hard to be the best I could be at it, so I knew I was always getting better. The difference between that and youth is there's no ceiling on that, so you can always graft and get better and better at something. So if someone offers me an opportunity to get better at something quite quickly, as hard as that's going to be, as much of an ask it is, I'm going to say yes. I'm always going to say yes, because it's a chance to get better.
But also that saying comes in true, right? For people watching, sometimes when you're thrown in the deep end, it's swim or drown.
Swim,
right?
Yeah.
And if you got it in you, and this is something you want to do, then you'll make it work, right? But there's a lot of things. You're smiling.
I'm smiling because the way you asked the question said it's worth it. I asked you now, is it worth it? And I was like, I remember going like, yeah. Like, you were asking if there's a value in it. Like, is it worth the value of what I'm asking you to do? Like the change you have to make, the cost of balancing life elsewhere. Of course, it's a yes.
There's an interesting thing, guys. Well, remember the cost is a lot. Remember when you're after something, when you feel that you got a calling, or you know what, you can always see the potential in something, or you see the potential in yourself and something. There's always a sacrifice. There's never a positive without a negative. And if everyone wants to watch Cinderella and think the fucking glass foot always ends up really happily and ever after, it's a bit of a...
I hope it's a glass shoe, not a glass foot. That would be a problem.
Always
glass foot fits.
Always doesn't work like that.
It's not Disney.
There's always a positive and negative. If you're going to work 16 hours, there's a negative to that. Whether that negative is you don't see friends, whether that negative is you sacrifice time with your loved one, whether that's relationships, whether it's family members, there's always negatives. And we're not, to some degree, I've always said to Helen, that they're not meant to be there long term, right? Because ultimately, eventually, at some level, you do need balance. But unfortunately, when you're in our profession, it requires time in, and you get to some levels of it where you think, fuck it, right? You can talk about them. So let's just fast forward then. So we obviously go a year ahead. So we went. I don't know, where are we now?
So what that would be 2018, really, wouldn't it? So it's
2017. Right?
2017 started in the end of May. Same day, by the way. I was telling someone that story the other day. I remember I finished at 11. At British Gas, it's a big presentation. It's always a big thing. Like, people come from all over the building, all different floors, comes to a grammar table, gave me loads of Lego, because that's literally my age range. Yeah, thanks, cheers. It was 11:30. I went up to the head of the department and went, I'm leaving now. He's like, you're here till 3. I went, I've done everything. And then literally I was at the studio by 12, wasn't I? The same day I walked straight in, walked out, drove straight from British Gas straight to the studio, started work straight away. That was in the May. And then I think it was like the following February, wasn't it? The following February, hit a wall.
Let's just actually bring it back. What do you think? Because obviously back then we weren't really structures. What gave you the discipline to keep learning? Because you obviously you had that book, don't you? You had that book. You used to make those notes in that book, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I've still got that. I've still got 3 of them.
Would you say one of your skill sets is just asking for help?
No. It is now.
What? Yeah, but when you felt like, I don't know, something weren't working, you hated that though, didn't you?
I hate that. Because I always put so much pressure on myself that I should always know the answer, or be at a different stage, or be better than I always thought I was at that stage.
The interesting thing we don't know probably about me or Helen is that I can be a bit of a dick.
I think everyone knows that.
But a dick in the sense that I just expect. Is that? But that's expected probably. I don't know how I articulate it, but the thing is, for example, is Helen always challenged herself, but always demanded more. Like, she always demanded. The thing is with me and her, she'll say, "Oh, Sam, you never praised me." Like, I'm not a big praiser in that sense. I praise when I feel work is phenomenal. And actually probably relates to a podcast I listened to that Isabel and Bally sent me about the Ant Milton one, where actually there's base expectations and there's elite basics.
Yeah, the above.
There's elite basics, Helen, and you're hitting the elite basics, miss, but unfortunately I'm not going to give you any praise for elite basics.
Because that should be there anyway.
Yeah,
that should be there all the time anyway.
That should be there all the time. But when
that's day to day. Come on.
Yeah. When you go above it, I can praise all day long. And that's probably the way I probably look at it now from listening to that podcast. But when you got to February then, what happened in Feb?
I was actually really interested because I don't know if you saw it, I was listening to Mark Cole's actually on the way over because you sent me to it's a place up in Nottingham. I've gone to a course because it was a really good practical course. So I was actually listening to the guy who was taking that course on the way over here because I still follow him a little bit. I remember, I think I just got to the point where I was like, I can't be any better than I am. And the balance had got, yeah, I know, that's insane. The balance had got for me, the cost had started to outweigh it. So the cost we talked about has started to outweigh where I thought I could get to. Like I wasn't going to get past that point. With all the learning and everything else, I wasn't seeing it. And then I got into a room that weekend with, it was a 2-day course, a whole weekend, with loads of different coaches from all over the country. Some had flown from Ireland and stuff. It was a big course, it's quite well renowned. And even in that room, I was looking at all these coaches thinking, oh, they're so much better than me, they get stuff. And then there was something in it, the way that it was presented, that I was like started absorbing it like I was starving child or something. Like, this stuff is flipping amazing, I can really use this. And then I remember coming back afterwards and actually using it in the studio with clients, actually seeing it working. And then it just kind of pushed the ceiling a little bit more. It took off my own doubts, self-doubts, removed the self-doubts. And then I could reevaluate that it was worth it again. And it just came at that particular point where I think it doesn't matter how much you put into yourself, sometimes it's your own self-doubt that keeps holding you back. And that was what that crucial time was.
It's important to recognise that, though, isn't it? The course, obviously, like you said, the course give you a platform.
Yeah.
And I remember, everyone's been there, you go to a seminar, you think you're the worst one in the room. Because you're paying for someone else, you just think you're not as good as everyone else. But sometimes that's not a bad thing to do.
Yeah. Right?
But sometimes it's important to do that. Sometimes it's important to look around you. Because the thing is, for example, when you're in one building as well, you can always, going back to Milton, you can always let your basics become just very little. So your growth becomes very little. But actually, when you put yourself in a room of other people who you feel are the same calibre or even more than you, it's like, man, there's still room to grow. I'm nowhere yet.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I think that gave me that, it could have gone the other way, right? Because it could have made it worse. I could have gone, oh, Jesus, this is it. I'm going to have to take the rest of the weekend and just tell myself how shit I am in comparison. Or I can actually start using the stuff practically and then see the reward and benefit of it and then be able to give that to clients, which is the whole point of everything I do anyway. And that was rewarding in itself.
When did we do the MI course?
That was after. That was at March, April time after that. So
obviously me and Helen went on a motivation interviewing course. And for those of you who don't really know that, obviously I'm not going to tell you the ins and outs of it, it's just our secret. But the interesting thing is, obviously, both of me and Helen went there on this course. And this will give you some insight. Me and Helen obviously both have baggage. Whether you want to describe it as baggage or whether you want to describe it as life lessons or whatever you want to describe it as, really. But in essence, we both went into this place not knowing that what we're about to probably do is come out on top of some of these things or challenge ourselves in some of these areas of topics. But actually what came out of it is actually both of us dealt with some demons, not necessarily fully in depth at the root cause, but it gave us an opportunity to get a look at a different perspective of things and challenge ourselves. And that's something what I'd probably say that Helen's really good at to some degree, is actually looking at herself and challenging herself and obviously using that as a catalyst to drive forward. But let's go fast forward again then. So obviously, guys, remember, when we started, we had 56 members. You've got to appreciate the fast pace of the company was growing, right? And the demand became more. The demand became more. Me, the hours was nothing. Just who I am, right? But Helen doesn't have that same connection, or she'll probably describe it as she does now. Yeah. But for example, there's still as demand increases. For example, pressure increases as well, right? And we don't have the systems we have now. We don't have any of that now.
We had a lot of Excel spreadsheets. I do remember that.
We had a lot of Excel.
Ooh, lots of formulas going on.
But actually, the progressiveness of it, and actually the interesting thing, always the most challenging, was bringing another coach on board. But we'll talk about that later. But in terms of obviously where do we get to then? Because didn't you break down at one point?
Yes. Yes, I did. I'd take a little time out. I think it was
You know what, we're going to hold that on that.
yeah.
Right, this time out, guys, is going to come. You ever heard someone say, I feel tired? I feel tired, I'm working too much. But then you ask them what time do you go to bed? 9 times out of 10 they go to bed at 12 o'clock. Right, or 11 o'clock. And then they tell you I can't sleep. What does that tell you? Is it the hours? Or is it your ability to actually create a routine that you can stick to that allows you to amplify active recovery and move on again? Something to figure out, right? But Helen, for example, like I said to you, no matter how much knowledge Helen developed, even probably when she went through this period, Helen still not a potential. In my opinion, it's still basic. I'm going to be honest. Even though she was good at basics, it was still really basic. I'm going to be honest. She was good.
You're back to being a dick earlier.
She was good.
Just go back to that comment.
She was good, but
it's alright.
I'm going to be honest.
I was turning up on time.
I'm going to be honest, she excelled more in a later date. But it was still basic for me. But my memo, you got to understand, my basics is high, right? I demand it high myself, and she'll call me out on that, and vice versa. But Helen hit a brick wall. Boom. We'll give you detail. Helen hit a brick wall, right? There's 2 scenarios. One, she had a full chicken, right?
It always comes back to the full chicken. I ate a whole chicken.
Helen had a full chicken.
I mean, it was cooked. Can we just confirm it was cooked? It wasn't raw.
But slow eating did not take place.
No, it was like a seagull. You ever seen a seagull trying to eat something where it just goes...
Right, and then she went to hot flushes and fucking hot palpitations and everything, right? There's one element. And then there's another element where, in essence, how would you describe it, Helen? How did we get to that point?
I had no, I would say running up to that, I was putting everything so much in, I wasn't putting anything into myself, which I think would be a fair description of that. So, I wasn't being clever.
Do you always think people blame the thing?
What, the
thing?
The situation, the role?
Yeah, the thing. Yeah. So, this is happening to me, but it must be the thing.
It must be Sam demanding hours out of you. It must be the business situation of business. It must be the business, there's too many clients, or it was why the business growing, blah blah blah. And it wasn't that. It was that actually I wasn't being. Now I can look back and say I wasn't being efficient with looking after myself, or knowing what that actually meant. So knowing exactly how many hours of sleep I need, knowing what actual time out meant mentally, meditating. I wasn't meditating then, was I? For example.
But you don't understand, when you're in that place, guys, and a lot of us probably would have been in that place, you blame everything else. Like, that is very attachment you have, an emotional attachment. You blame what is in front of you, right? You blame the building, you blame flipping working hours, you blame me, right? And there's an element where you have to just accept that, right? Because but the thing is, probably incredible, because obviously, did you have time off?
I had a day and a half.
She had a day and a half, that's what I'd let her have.
Yeah, it's been a day. No, actually, do you remember? Because I was like, I'm coming in, and I had to be talked out of coming in. I did have a day, yeah. I did have a full day, but actually wasn't.
But what happened? Because obviously your resting heart rate was high, wasn't it?
Yeah, my resting heart rate was kind of like in the 90s at that point. It was psychologically. It was a psychological thing. Partly physical as well, because I just wasn't even looking after us.
Did you ever want to quit?
Yes, that's a lie. If I say no, that's a lie. Of course, it would be absolutely logical to anybody watching, listening, to say, of course you must talk about. Of course, it's at that point in time, it would have been a constant negotiation, because when you're in that negative zone, to some degree, even as much as I was advancing, even as much as I was enjoying the role, there was always that self-talk, like constant mantra of I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. And what I can't do means, really, can be adapted to any situation, right?
Or the grass is green on the other side.
Yeah, to some degree, or I can't do this anymore, can't do this, can't do that, can't manage it. If I was which I was in that stage, then of course the answer back would be, then don't do it. And then you have to have that conversation with yourself.
That led on to the thing though, didn't it? I describe it as like, it led on, because obviously it opened up other areas which we won't necessarily touch on, but there's an element where if I call it the shit time.
It was actually, wasn't it? I mean, it becomes more creative. It was just shit.
I've become quite sensitive, which really shouldn't be, right? But at the same time, for example, you know when you've probably all been seen it, like, for example, someone's just a ghost. That's probably the best way to describe. Someone's there, but they're a ghost. And whether it's the demeanour, whether it's their attitude, just a ghost. What do you think the turning point with that was?
God, I don't know.
Because it went on for some time, didn't it? I remember we had conversations like, if you want to call it then, let's walk away.
I think it was, it was more to do with I was being pulled in lots of different directions outside the studio. And actually what had to happen is I had to have some quite crucial conversations in other aspects of my life, because ultimately my passion always was in my role. And what was happening is I was being pulled away from my passion. And actually, I thought at the time that was the right thing. Because if you talk to anybody, let's just be honest, if you talk to anybody about this role and you explain the hours, if you just explain the bare minimum, like just bullet point it, the majority of people will say, that's insane. You know, you don't need to work those hours. You shouldn't be doing it, right? And even if you try and explain what it gives to you as a role, they still don't quite get it. I'm very lucky and grateful now that my friends and family and significant other now understands that, because I've gone through enough with them now and had enough conversations for them to understand that. At that time, however, nobody got it. Nobody got it. They didn't see where it was going to lead for me. They didn't understand it, and so I was being permanently challenged outside of the studio about why were you in this situation, why have you got to this point, walk away, etc. And actually it just required me to gather my thoughts about how I wanted to say it, actually have the confidence to have the conversations with people and continue. And that's really what happened. It just took some time to do that, because obviously it's not comfortable conversations either, is it?
You had some big bad boys though, didn't you?
Oh, I did have some bad boys, yeah.
Conversations. You understand, right? Imagine, this is no disrespect, because everyone, when you're in a relationship, there's always parts of a relationship you enjoy. And parts of it where you think work and parts of it where you don't. But like, there's an element, obviously, for yourself, Helen, when you went through a period, right, it took everything.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing in relationships, it's always the thing. It's always the thing. If you stop doing this, we could go to this, or we could do this. But something to remember, guys, is that Helen's probably a pinnacle of this, is that actually you got to do what you truly think's right, heart-wise, passion-wise. Like if your head's telling you that you can be the best, or what was it telling you? Like, I'm interested, I'm intrigued. Because I know, you could probably ask me the same question, I ain't got a fucking clue.
What's the question?
The question is like, how did you know that this is something you just need to keep on? Like, how did you know? Like,
because it's the only thing I've ever actually thought that I'm actually bloody good at. I'll say that, I'm bloody good at it.
I didn't tell her that, but
no, because again, he doesn't give compliments. However, we'll be elite at, let's just say the right language, just bare basic at. Because I think if you ask any PT, and we obviously we're meeting coaches, etc., they'll always come out with the same, I think, answer, which isn't wrong. I want to help people, right?
Superficial.
But that's very
blasé.
It's very blasé. It doesn't really say, well, who do you want to help? What does that person look like? What is your end result? How do you know that they've got to what they want to get to? Helping people, so I could help somebody open the door. That's not the same as changing their life, is it? That's a completely different thing. And I think that as much as you could balance out, let's talk about the shit time. You could take all that shit time, right? All that shit period of time for me in my own journey. Within that, though, there were still moments of which clients were having fantastic realizations about not just physical things, life events. I was able to support them through, etc., which would be like beacons of light and all of that. So even though all that stuff was going on, that shit show, those moments always push you forward. And you don't need to have them. I don't need to have them every day or every week. I love it if it's that regularly. If it's even like one every month, and guess what? It's like that client has the realization of their life, and you change the course of their life. You can't measure that in anything else outside your life. I can't.
Do you ever? Here's another one for you. Do you ever? Anyone ever had an anchor where you have a dead weight? It feels like you've got dead weight around you all the time. A dead weight, like you can't move forward. Yeah, as well. Can't move forward. Feels like a dead weight. it's only until you release that dead weight. That's probably where I'd say, Helen, where the actual elite standard comes into play.
I think it was a realisation that we don't talk about it in detail other than say that.
Okay.
Sometimes, right? Sometimes, I think at all times, we're in relationships for a particular period of time because they serve a period of time in your life, whatever reason, right? And that is always a positive influence in your life in some way. Now, it may come a time where both parties need different things to develop in life. And what I needed to develop at that point was to continue on my own journey, as did my other half, and that was at the time, and that was the right decision for both of us. So actually, it just released, for me, it was like releasing the brakes on my development then, because it was just like this, even though again that period of time that was really low, actually now collectively I remember thinking what happened in that year, like did that year go and I didn't develop, and actually I look back now and go, well actually you can flip that and say, wow,
that's something to remember, guys.
It was like a steam train, and at that point it was like
so what we're talking about is going through a divorce, right? So fundamentally, like guys, this is one of the things what Helen's been through, but a lot of you don't know, but also probably the moment is a starting point, right, where the blossoms start to open. But like she said, she went through that year thinking she's not grown. But also remember, you're gonna have tough decisions to make. You're gonna go, oh now I'm lonely, or this is happening, or what am I gonna do? But also give her an opportunity to start looking at inside herself. And this is where probably Helen started to grow the most, when she started to look inside herself and actually start to realise some of the areas what she needs to work on, truly work on. Not necessarily just say you're going to work on it. I mean, do the work. Because at that moment in time, when you're in that place, because it's still in that place, you're still thinking, right? And when I still have a conversation, you're still ticking, Helen. You're not. We ain't going. We ain't going to fifth gear yet, miss. We're still ticking.
Yeah, definitely.
And probably started releasing the brakes, but you probably learnt a lot more now, haven't you?
Oh yeah, I remember there's a couple of things that happened which now I fully appreciate and I won't ever negotiate on. Is that actually I stopped giving myself reasons to not do things for me. I think is the main thing from out of that. Whether that was for work or for play, it was still important that I did it, and it's still important that I continue to do it now, and I do it on my own. Like it has to be time on my own to do the things that I enjoy and love, and it's not a negotiation. I continue to do that, and that's really important. And also, again, thinking about this year, like I remember thinking, at the beginning of this year, thinking, oh, we're going in the same pattern, nothing else. Whoa, what's happening this year? We're going indoors. How am I going to develop? And then actually, this year more than ever, actually, I've probably developed the most. Again, if you're looking at something, there's always an opportunity to put personal growth in, no matter what the circumstances or environment. And this year, I would say this year I've probably grown the most, which is super ironic considering that actually I've probably spent the most time physically away from training people. Actually I've spent the most, then on the opposite side, the most amount of time coaching people. So then again, it's like the opportunity to grow is massive. It's like we were talking about the hours earlier. Like I always see it, and we've talked about it before. You can work 8 hours a day, and maybe that's 4 hours coaching, 3 hours training, a couple of hours coaching. That's as much as you're going to develop. You take that and double it or triple it, that's as much as you're going to grow and develop. So this year's just been an opportunity to continue to work in different ways. So this year's been epic. But yeah.
What do you say most people struggle with? Finding that
clients?
Switching off? So like, for example, if you look at your life now, I know at some stage it'll always become unbalanced and so forth, but you've become very efficient at discipline with leaving your phone, or discipline with not social media, discipline with being present, discipline with giving your loved one the time, discipline with planning things. Where would you say is that just because all the things you've learned?
It's all the things I've learned, and the main thing is that being able to articulate that and having the confidence in myself to say this is what I want, and being lucky enough to be with somebody who has the same thought processes and is exactly as open to having the conversation as well, and she has her own stuff that she wants to do as well, and we both have that respect for the space, and that's the thing, we both want that for each other, that we still have the space. Equally though, it's like her saying, my understanding of you being present is that your phone isn't there, and me saying, okay, my phone isn't there, however the compromise is that for an hour it will be, and then it's done. Like, I understand that, she understands that, And yeah, it's discipline. It's also it's conversation.
Yeah.
It's communication. People always know it's communication, right? You ask anybody in a relationship what's the most important, they'll say communication, but there's so many rare people actually do it properly, really properly. You know, it's so proper when you feel a bit, oh God, I'm gonna have this conversation. Like a lot of people just avoid that. I know I did.
I'll tell you what we had. Right, we had a conversation like this, right?
Oh God, like what?
The one when we was at the gym.
Oh yeah. When? Which one? There's been a few.
When we sat in the gym, you said something. I'm 2 miles away to stay.
Oh yeah, that's what happened.
Right, guys, and again, I'm not sharing this to you to say for any particular soft reasons or anything. I want really to understand what Helen's journey has been like, but also understand that some of the things she does or things she has done or not done is a result of her just being honest with herself, but looking in the mirror, but then challenging it. I think what Helen's become very good at is looking in the mirror, being challenged, 2, taking input, but not using that as a direction, but then making the decision herself, not because of pressure from someone else or vice versa or external factors. It's herself making the decision. So Helen obviously said, Sam, you know what, I could do this, but earn more money doing this other thing. But the other thing obviously we weren't going to bring any joy. It was just going to bring a perception of a simpler lifestyle. But would it not been fulfilling? But no, but guess what, when someone throws it at you, it just make you stumble a little bit. It just make you question: is it worth it? Is it not worth it?
Yeah.
And what would you say? What happened there?
Well, yeah, the thing is, we've got to take a step back, because the thing is, you always said to me is that you and I have to be open and honest with each other, and part of my self-development is being honest with Sam. And actually, yeah, because sometimes he can be a dick. Like, we've already established this. Not that it stops me saying something at all. It's just for me. Like, I've always. It's not that I don't like confrontation. I'm not uncomfortable in it anymore. And that's the point anymore. There might have been particular times where I wouldn't want to voice how uncomfortable I was in a role or what it really meant, etc. And now it's easier for me to say, Sam, actually, look, this is a possible avenue for me to go down. And I said at the time, like, I know this isn't going to, or it's not. I'm not going to take this role. Like, it's obvious I'm not going to take this role. However, I need you to know where my head's at, because I'm going through it at the minute. And actually, part of it was like, I need to talk it out so that. Firstly, he knew where I was, so if he's questioning why suddenly Helen's not elite for a minute, and he's going, why are you not elite? And I'm like, well, actually.
I think that's important, though, isn't it? That honest, sometimes conversation ain't nice. Sometimes some things you want to hear are not nice, but sometimes it's very important to get you off your chest, because, like I said, it naturally will just affect your performance anyway. And we know each other that well that I'll probably see through it anyway.
Yeah, you'd see it soon enough.
Right? But again, remember, it's not been easy to get to this point, and this is where, if personal trainers are watching this, right, it ain't easy to get to this point. Like, it's not.
No.
It's not just a walk in the park. It's incredible how much effort, time you have to keep putting into it and to the role to develop. Because remember, you're left to your own devices to some degree. You can get qualifications and certifications, but they don't really mean that much in the grand scheme of things if you don't actually apply it. So the qualification is one thing, and that probably ticks in the ego box in your head, but it actually doesn't. If you can't apply it, there's no point doing the qualification in the first place, really, to some degree. But again, that requires effort. But if you fast forward where you are now, then, for example, obviously through all that journey, remember smoking 25 fags a day, KFCs, bottles of wine,
Jesus.
Right? Obviously losing the weight, getting to your level, going through that, changing career. This sounds an incredible story, by the way.
Yeah, didn't it? Everything is made for a movie. Who would pay me? Ask that question.
Change your career. Obviously going through relationships, ups and downs, for example, then being divorced, and then obviously now where we are now in lockdown, world pandemic, and where we are now. I just keep hitting you. I like this is what Noelle does when she wants more food.
Is that it?
Yeah, it's like
What does she say that
you
from?
give her food, and then she does this. And you give her more food, and she does this. It's basically her way.
Basically saying he's hungry.
But obviously where you are now.
Yeah.
How do you summarise where you are now?
Jesus, that's not easy. Flip that. I've still not reached my potential, and I'm
But do you ever think you will though? Because I don't think I have.
No.
The thing is, the interesting thing is, that what me and Helen are very understanding of that. If we think our potential's here, we know that this chunk in the middle is fear, flipping fear. Like, there's never a point where you're going to reach potential. There's only a point where you reach potential if you tell yourself you've reached potential. and then you stop and just think that's potential. But actually, the potential in personal training or in self-development is actually unlimited. But you can actually become too cray-cray with it and actually don't utilise it.
Yeah, you could just be just churning through information and not using any of it.
Which is what I think a lot of people get lost into that when they start meditation, or they start thinking that I'm going to listen to podcasts, and start getting lost in a worldly world where they think they're actually progressing, but actually they're not.
Yeah, they think that because of I can get that. I think you do have to be so clever and efficient with what you use and what you learn. So clever. Do
you think you have to assess it sometimes, step back and go, actually, all that things I've just looked at, have actually implemented any of that?
I see it like this. I find it like this. I spoke to your instructors before. Sometimes you go through, it's almost like growth spurts, isn't it? Where you push through the fear, and then you go, oh, all right, okay, oh. You just need a bit of time sometimes to just actually stabilise. Continue to use what you've just learned to push through that barrier.
Oh, that's a good behaviour you learned, yeah.
Yeah, and you just, when you get there, you just kind of stay there for a little bit, and then you're ready to push through the next fear barrier once you're
Same weight loss, Same weight loss. If you get down to a weight, you've got to stabilise at that weight.
Well, it's change, isn't it? It's personal change, whether it is mental or physical. You have to stabilise before you go again, sometimes, I think. You don't always just keep going and keep going and keep going, because then it becomes an endless slog.
And then you don't think you actually progressed at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Valid point. Just remember that, guys. So whether it's up or down, losing weight or personal development, you have to stabilise. You have to make sure some of your ducks are in the row. Right, stop adding. Sometimes you don't need to keep adding. And adding just becomes a bit like Instagram is when you get a like. You get a like and it makes you feel good, but adding makes you feel good, but actually you're doing fuck all with the adding, except making yourself more confused. So like Helen said, to probably stabilise with some collective behaviours, make sure they're solid, make sure they're, again, from the Ant Middleton podcast, one of the questions to him is, what makes you so good? He says, I'm elite at the basics. I love that. I'm elite at the basics.
That's a really good answer.
Right. And the basics, just doing the basics at elite level. So anything he puts his mind to, for example, he does it with full intentions, or actually chooses not to do the thing in the first place. Right? But that's, I think that's where Helen's, obviously, the stabilisation is actually incredibly important. But also remember, that is a journey. Like, we're talking about a journey here. In theory, boy, what you've done, with the amount of effort you put in and time you put in, we always say this, don't you? Sometimes at the start of journeys, with any change, you have to put a lot of effort in, right? But actually, you're still putting effort in now, but it's probably not, would you say it's the same? It's not the same,
It's not the same, it's more clever, I would say.
Smarter.
It's smarter, because rather than throw 3 hours at something and only use practically an hour of it, I will throw 40 minutes of something that has real quality and real value. And if I am studying, I'll cut it off at the point where I know that I'm not taking it in or it's useful. Rather than just keep going for the sake of saying I've done it, I'll switch tactics with myself. So again, it helps me balance my life better. Again, going back to an earlier point, because if I think now, right, as a client now, if I go all the way back to when I was a client, I remember watching the coaches, or just, it was almost like the glass wall was like the barrier between us and them, right? What you see on the other side of the glass when you sit in the office as a client, it ain't even 1% of the job, really. The amount of effort and time you have to put into it to get to where you want to really be, to be very good at your job, it's just limitless and bottomless. However, the amount of effort you put in is what you get out of it. Yes, absolutely. However, it's the quality, I think, of the effort you put in as well.
Yeah, because the thing is, you're paid. In essence, you're paid on your own knowledge, aren't you? That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like it's like you're self-employed in some respect, but you got to grow as a result. You get security in one element, but if you don't bring the other element of you self-developing, you end up in the same place anyway.
That is literally it. And I think I was never going to accept mediocre. In anything in life, I'm never going to accept mediocre. I've accepted mediocre before, I'm not going to accept it again for myself.
I think that's important, right? I think, I keep going back, Middleton's a great podcast, by the way.
I feel like we're sponsoring this.
Should
in a minute, he's going to come in, he's going to come in the background, oh, guess who's here? It's Ant!
So, like, Middleton talks about monocoloured.
You have to post this, you're going to have to post this podcast after this.
Talks about monocoloured, right? In one area where I don't really believe in. I've adapted myself a little bit, but I'm probably not going to adapt myself that much more. Which is that teenagers are becoming more like babies and adults are becoming more like teenagers, where adults should be acting like adults and taking responsibility. personal responsibility for their things in life, rather than becoming a teenager, where a teenager just throws this shit out of the pram, right? Because actually we are adults, and what it really discusses is actually this behaviour that where if I kept saying, for example, in the early days of Helen, if I would have said to Helen, "Oh, Helen, you're doing a great job. Helen, well done," and actually, Helen, it's okay, you got this wrong, but keep doing this. But it's okay, you did it wrong. I guarantee, if I went down that route with Helen, again, I think she wouldn't be who she is today.
No.
Right? Because I think if I would have just mollycoddled and just said, "Oh, that's okay, it's okay, just keep doing it at that level," she wouldn't be where she is now. So there's an element where to be an adult or to be pressurised, that's important. And I think one of the biggest tricks that Helen's probably got is that ability to keep being challenged, but not be fearful of it. Remember, sometimes sitting across from me, or any of you figures, when someone's saying to you, this ain't good enough, ask yourself, really, if all of you employed, right, if your boss opposite you said, "I'm going to be honest, this piece of work was a bag of shit," right, would you, A, acknowledge that and take it on the chin but ask them for feedback and build on it, or 2, would you complain to HR?
Complain to HR. That's what I've done before.
Good.
For British Gas.
Right.
HR was very busy at the British Gas.
Right? And that's where this Aunt Militant thing comes in. But actually, because how me and Helen's relationship developed, because I think the biggest thing for me and Helen, because I used to train as a client, so she knew what I was like. And I think that's a big thing as well. But the thing is as well, because I always said to her, and this, I didn't really do anything with Helen, she demanded it from herself. And that was the beautiful thing, she always demanded the better from herself. I'd say here, go here, she'd always beat it. Right? But remember, sometimes when you have that mentality as well, like when she broke down and things like that, for example, that's her always pushing the boundaries, but always pushing, but no looking at the recovery element. Right? Isabel, that was to you, recovery.
Ooh, just get one in, didn't he?
Jump! But I think, yeah, that'd be interesting to ask yourself, right? Because a lot of people fall into this trap of, I want more responsibility, I want more progression in my career, I want more money. But then ask yourself, what service, at what level are you pushing at?
I think if you've done a shit job, you know you've done a shit job.
Yeah, but
I think so. But when you get challenged on it, you have to either accept it or go, actually, do you know what? That could have been better. I accept that. Or you go, you start the story, don't you? Once upon a time, it's all right. What's wrong with this? The end. Or you just go, yeah, okay, that could have been better. Actually, if I'm going to be honest, just accept it and just get better.
I think that's the interesting thing. Is it's about accepting sometimes things are not good enough. Because the interesting one, the militant things, talks about
there's a bromance going on here. Is this where you're growing your beard, a bit like Ant?
It talks about, for example, the more you mollycoddle, or the more you say, "Oh, it's okay, that can be better next time." The interesting thing is what he says after time is after a period of time, say a year, 2 years, their standard of themselves is that low.
Low.
They moan about their career.
Oof, interesting.
And there's no progress, or I don't earn more money. But it's because their standard of themselves and they just accepted that it wasn't going to improve it next time. That language and that way of teaching just been materialised over 5 years or 3 years, but actually never ever progressed from it.
We set standards for ourselves, that's the difference. We always talk about it. When standard is always high.
Oh, you love this guy?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
he is.
I'm just basically telling Helen to step up.
Yeah. He's just saying it's still not good enough. You still need to sort it out. Come on, you're still shit.
You just want to lead performer. In essence, I tell you that. To be honest, I think Helen's obviously better than me.
Oh Lord, you put it out on social media. What are you doing?
just saying that.
What? I'll accept that. Yes, I am. Oh, that's the prettiest thing though. 18 months ago, I wouldn't have said that actually. I think no, that's not true. I think we're I'm stronger in different elements than you, and you're still stronger in different elements than me.
I'm strong in all elements.
Yeah.
His way isn't always the right way. Actually, 9 out of 10, Isabel.
It is actually the right way. I'm going to be honest. We can try.
Try and argue. Trust me.
You know that one guy at work who said, "I think we should do this," and they go, "No," and then 2 weeks later they come back and go, "So I've had this idea." Okay.
Trust me, it's a great.
It's all my idea. It was all my idea. I didn't hear anywhere before.
I do spin it quite well.
He does. He just changes one word on the end. It's a completely different idea.
Right, pretty.
I think Sunny had one as well. I think.
I can't press on it.
It's because your big sausage fingers can't press them all. Oh no,
My
why did not see
question with all of the coaching and passion that you have take a lot of emotional strain away from the arm. I'd like to see it all, but
yeah.
There's your iPad.
Oh,
I've got it here. My question, with all the coaching and passion that you have, you take a lot of emotional strain in the way from a massive role. You have all the support you give all the members. How do you manage to offload and keep it from current overflow?
Oh, that's interesting. It gets better as you have more experience, is my answer to that. I think it's always challenging. It's always super, super challenging on a personal level if you are talking to a client who has had similar experiences to you, and they are discussing that with you, to remain fully detached. And we are human beings, FYI, and not Terminators. So I would say now I don't even give it much thought. I leave it at the door of the office, or the iPad or video as it is now. Because the simple facts, you need to be present for the next. The coping mechanism for it, if I'll be more specific, for me, is to still do all the stuff I do for me. So I do play 1 hour of PlayStation every 2 weeks, right? That's it, 1 hour every 2 weeks. That's a non-negotiable. I climb now. I can go climbing, which is good, and go for a walk. The thing is, I still do those things for me. I still meditate, because that's how my coping mechanism is, to do things for me on my own.
I think that's another.
You have to have that to be able to switch off.
I think that's another thing as well. It's like, obviously Helen has a personal Facebook and a personal Instagram. It's like you're not, none of you are connected on that. And there's an element of that. The reason why that is because also it creates separation from our life, right? Which is very important. Remember, Instagram is sometimes the place where we want to see what everyone's doing. There's an element from Helen's perspective and the team where there's an element where that life has to be separated. So they feel that they have separation. I think the thing is as well, on top of that, from what I would probably give on the answer is that we can take a lot. I can take a lot of emotional strain, or conversations, no matter how maybe someone's crying or not. I can take a lot on. I can take it on because one, I'm used to it. Two, I've probably already done it. And three, for example, I've learned how to deal with it. But at the same time, I think the biggest question you've got to ask yourself is just being honest with yourself. So, for example, I can walk away from a conversation knowing I've given it my all. I've given the best advice I possibly can give based on the information I receive. So, for example, if the information I receive is a bit wishy-washy, chances are my information back is going to be a bit wishy-washy. But I can't control that. All I can control is what's being told to me and then the information I'm going to give back. Now, if someone's being really honest and say, Sam, this is how I feel, this is how I feel, and I go, okay, are you willing to do this? And you go, yes, but deep down in your head, you're not willing to do it, then that's the issue first. So we are doing our role. We can take it on, and sometimes we take it on personally as well, a lot of the time that someone's not succeeding, but it's only because we've got to get you to that point to see that where you need to make improvements. The moment you start to look in the mirror, and it's the hardest thing to do, the moment you actually start to progress, so therefore it makes our job a lot easier. Yeah.
I think the other thing to add is that, again, from a coaching team point of view, we all have 30, 60 and 90-day personal goals that are non-work related, which we've all written. And
days coming up soon,
yeah, no, mine are done, which is good.
How many days got left?
Oh, that's it. No, well, I don't know. I think it was I've passed mine. The 60 days passed. That was last week.
Yeah, I've got 90 days.
I did mine earlier.
Oh, so mine's
I've done
90
mine
days.
earlier. My 90-day one is early because that's been completed today. So we also, that's actually dedicating time for our own personal development and things we want to achieve. So mine was go to a spa, to organise a chill out room, and to go climbing, and all those things are done. Paddleboarding as well, so paddleboarding's in, got paddleboarding done, as well. And that's the thing, like for me, I have, so just for on my personal life, my girlfriend and I have a separate WhatsApp group between just the two of us, small group. However, if we post something into that group that we want to do, the rules are, it's got to be feasible, as in nothing ridiculous, like go skydiving in Dubai or something where it's not really possible, realistically. But it has to be a realistic thing. The rule is, if you put it in the group, we have to do it. So then we work through everything that's in there. So then we just tick things off. Like, okay, we're going to go do kayaking, cool, kayaking. We're going to do a hot tub weekend, right, tick, done. I've got breakfast with monkeys, got to book that one. Having breakfast with monkeys, I hope you don't have to wear a mask. And that one's coming up, right? So again, it's just...
monkey mask.
Yeah, but again, it's like you can have a challenging week, whatever, if you know that you... Yeah, I was thinking that, maybe onesie, really confusing. If I have a particularly challenging time emotionally, it's always with a client, for example, or conversations. That's okay, because I've always got stuff in place in my own life as a thing to look forward to, and it's just coping mechanism. So Sunny Helen as well.
Sunny said, no, Kate,
okay.
What was the most frustrating thing a client can do that challenges you?
Oh, most frustrating. Is there one? I don't know if there is one. The most frustrating.
I'm going to be honest, I don't find anything frustrating. The interesting thing is, I find it a challenge. I don't find it frustrating. Because, unfortunately, you're not meant to know the answers. Like, it's my job or Helen's job to all the teams is really to cipher through your BS to yourself to get to the point. So, for example, if someone doesn't do a food journal, but say they want to lose weight, then we have to backtrack it, and then that's our responsibility to help you backtrack it and help you see what you really want. So there's never a frustrating element. I never take frustration from it, because sometimes we're in a world where it's too much information and we just perceive that we should have to make or do something based on anything around us. And so sometimes I find it very, a bit like probably Cluedo, really. I don't find.
What, who done it?
Probably wrong
answer.
analogy.
In the library.
I just find it. For me personally, I find it a challenge. I never find it frustration. I find it a challenge to step up and find an answer for.
Yeah, it's just I don't get frustrated really for that.
Sam, you and Danielle need a WhatsApp group challenge. Yeah, good one. I'll have one next year. Right. Right, we've been going now for an hour and a half.
Have we? Oh, bugger.
I was supposed to finish at 11. Danny's going mad at me. My question, what's the most rewarding moment for you as a coach based on your personal journey?
Rewarding moment. What's the most rewarding moment for you as a coach based on your personal journey? I would say the most rewarding moment is, that's a bit double, isn't it? Is it coach or for my own personal journey? Because I say it's personal development. My most rewarding moment is understanding my own potential.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and I think that kind of is both for both, actually, to be fair. I think you can go through life, I have been coasting through life up until probably not very long, right? It's only been 3 years, something like that.
Yeah, that is,
3 years, Jesus.
Like
3.5 years. It's
like,
been 3.5 years I was coasting through life.
Feels like, yeah. And that's an interesting thing, right? Something to remember, Helen's not 25, 28, changing career. Like, changing your career at 38, right? Boom. And changing career, remember, changing career, changing pay. Sacrifices. Remember, money was always a big fear, right? We're not sitting here saying Helen came to a job and she got paid 100 grand a year, right? But again, fear of that. Remember, sometimes you have to understand, if you want to change career, you've got to do all the things that come with it. Just because you've got qualifications in one area of your life doesn't mean they transfer to this area of life. We always say this to coaches coming on board. I don't mind you've been somewhere else, but guess what? When you come here, you're different. Because how we teach and how we coach is different, so therefore the reflection of where you start is different, right? And that's, remember, challenge will come into that place as well. Remember, if you go from one life having sort of all the things you want and going, oh, we've got to pull back on that, can't do that, can't have that, right? And Helen's one of them things, right? Money was one of them things. That's a big game changer at 38, right? Remember that, guys.
Those things, right? You tick the boxes. Oh, I own a house, got a car. I'm having a holiday every two times a year or whatever. Yeah, mate.
Yeah. And that's something to think about, right, guys? So when you're all in that place, remember, sometimes 38, especially women, we all go, we should be married by this page, we should have this, we should tick this, without prejudice. I'm saying that before someone slaps me. We should do this, and then so forth. So we have this tick list agenda in our head. But you've got to remember, when Helen made that career change, that tick list went out the window to some degree.
Yeah.
Because remember, she ain't got the financial resources to do any of them things. Right? Because ultimately the financial resources rely on her getting better. That's the ironic thing. However, her financial reward at that moment in time relied on her getting better. And I always say to this, I had a conversation with Ricky, and Ricky was like, how come I don't do this thing? I was like, probably because you've got too much safety here. If you remove safety from a lot of people, you work out what kind of person you are. Right? Either you're a person that blames or creates excuses, or you're the person that steps up and challenges the status quo. And that's what Helen did. Right?
Yeah.
Because being 38 and actually changing career and going down in pay grades, right, to start again, because that's what it essentially is, you're starting again.
Start again.
Right? But like she said, you're starting again because you know, if you're starting again, if you ask her where she is now, would she foresee that when she started?
No.
Right? And that's the hardest thing to articulate as well to yourself.
Well, yeah, because you can't see the end goal. Because it's always if you've never experienced something or have nothing to match it against, is that? What is the potential when you don't see it? And now I've just let go of that as a control. Like, you just keep going. Because you always look back and go, who the heck was that last year? Or is it back each year and go, oh, what the hell?
Right. Any other questions? If you've got any more questions, then you got 1 minute to ask. Yo, Fruit. Boom.
Fruit. Hi.
Fruit, we're doing yoga and Pilates. You should be coming back soon.
Dude, get on it. Imagine, meditation. We're having meditation, Fruit.
Fruit, we won't be at that old place, don't we? We're not there anymore.
Fruit's be messing going, what's going on?
He's a lovely man.
Yeah. Who's he smile?
He just needs to do yoga, meditation.
Yeah.
He's former Pilates in his life. I love it. Amazing Helen. Yeah, I know. Basically, I thought he was interviewing me, really. It's changed around a little bit.
Yeah. So, Sam, are you a dick? Yes. End. Hi, Fruit. I'll squish later.
Right. Any more questions? Fruit, keep an eye out. UFit Studio 2.0.
UFit Village. We're calling it UFit Village. The village.
We're taking over. It's a secret to members in there.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
okay.
to Fruit.
Fruit's like, what's going on? Can't tell you for our members.
Right. Any other questions, guys? So unfit. I don't think there's any more questions now.
Oh.
Where are you now?
Oh.
Fruit. Unfortunately, Fruit, I'm sitting in my house right now. That's the probably minimum I can tell you. Just don't worry, Fruit. You'll hear about it when it happens, mate.
Life memoir. Okay. Alright then. Drop him a text.
Fruit, just beware, mate. We'll be everywhere. Everywhere by March. Yes, you're great too, Sam. Oh, cheers. That's suck up to me. This is Helen's show.
No, it's Aunt Milton's show.
my interview will come soon.
Oh, she misses singing in the gym. Just the really sad thing is I can't sing on the lives because I'll get muted. Because they would probably start muting.
If Helen got singing alive, I'd edit it and
yeah, she would edit it all out. It's 30 seconds long.
Right, any other questions?
Oh, same.
You let rip.
Eh?
You let rip.
Let rip? What the hell? No, I was just doing that.
No, it stinks. You let rip.
I don't know about it.
Right, so no more questions. Everyone's going to have a minute. You got a minute. Any more questions in a minute, we'll answer it. If not, we're going.
Got me a spa to get to.
Have you got time?
Yeah.
What time?
Eh?
What time?
What time? Oh, it's not this afternoon.
59, 58, 57,
It's wrong countdown.
56, 55,
Ask me a question!
54,
Forever hold your peace. I'll never answer another question for the rest of your lives.
52, skip that down to 30, 29, 28, this is easy now.
I think we're good. I think we're gold.
We're good. I think we just bossed it.
I think we just talked for an hour and a half, so I think we probably just covered everything anybody wanted to ask
Right.
at this point.
Peace out.
Oh.
Cheers.